Welcome to Sense of Style. I'm Stuart. 10 great signature scents for mature men. And as a mature man myself, who has a YouTube channel, I've had one for 2 years, my channel does skew more mature. I would say 2/3 of my audience are 35 and up, and that's the demographic I'm going for with this video. I've been collecting for 5 years. I have hundreds of fragrances. I am in a perfect situation to give good options for mature men. So what do I mean exactly by a signature scent, though? To me, they're a little bit different in your standard scent. A signature scent is something that you want to wear in as many situations as possible, because if it's going to be your signature, it's something you want to wear often. Now, obviously, it has to be a fragrance that you really like already, but there's some other criteria. So yeah, you want it situationally and seasonally diverse, at least 3 seasons, and you don't want something that's too formal, because then you're kind of limited where you can wear it, or too casual. So yeah, you want to get that sweet spot. But for me, the most important thing for a signature scent is you don't want it to be too popular. If it's too popular, it's not really going to be your signature scent. It's going to be out there in the universe. Now, I'm not saying you have to have something that is like extremely weird or odd, but you want it to be a little bit off the beaten path. And I have 10 really good options for you today. Fragrance number 1, this is Valentino Uomo. Now, this is the original Valentino Uomo. There was a 2021 release that has lighter fluid than this. You're looking for the light brown fluid. That's the one you want, because this one is much more masculine and much more mature leaning. The newer one is a little bit softer, a little bit sweeter, but this one, it is sweet. It's a little bit of a gourmand, but it has a really nice leather note that makes it more masculine and a little bit more mature, and it tones down the crazy sweetness. Now, there is some sweetness in this. This has chocolate, it has hazelnut, and it has coffee. There is no question that there is a kind of mild gourmandy element, but the leather just, as I said, tones down that sweetness, makes it more mature, makes it more masculine. And the great thing about this particular one is the performance. It's got really good projection. One of the best projecting fragrances for an eau de toilette that I've ever tried. Fragrance number 2, this is Givenchy Gentleman. Now, this is an original bottle. They do have a new fragrance called Givenchy Gentleman 1974, which is the same formula as this. My bottle's a little bit different because it's vintage, so it is a traditional masculine men's fragrance, one of the more masculine fragrances that I own. It's got a lot of leather. It's got a hint of honey, but don't be taken aback by that, because it's very so leather, honey. It's got some animalic notes, but more than anything, this is a patchouli fragrance, and the patchouli dry down is fantastic. It's the nicest patchouli designer scent that I've tried. It's really patchouli forward. And then, when you think of 1974, all I can think of is like hippies were everywhere, and hippies and patchouli go together like peas and carrots. So yeah, that makes sense. But it's definitely masculine, really nice fragrance. And the new formula is actually reasonably priced and very strong performance. Fragrance number 3 is Chanel Allure Homme Sport Eau Extreme. And now this fragrance perfectly embodies what I think is a great fragrance for a mature man, because it's a 2012 release. So there is sweetness there, kind of like turn of the century sweetness, as compared to 2024 sweetness, which is like heavy, heavy vanilla, which is one of the things that I'm trying to mitigate with a mature fragrance list. So this has tonka, and my God, is this a tonka masterpiece? It's a masterclass in subtlety in this fragrance. So you get the tonka, but you also get mandarin and mint. So you get a little bit of aromatic freshness, you get a little bit of citrus freshness, and then you get that beautiful tonka. And then there's a musky element. That's kind of like the Polsch trademark, is the musk, use of musk, and it works beautifully in this. When it comes to performance, for me, the performance is average, but there's one of my top favorite reviewers who I really trust. He gets great performance. So I'm starting to think it might be a subjective thing with me. It might not work great on my skin, but I think, though, either way, performance for the money It's an expensive fragrance, so performance for the money, it could be a little bit better, but it is absolutely fantastic. Fragrance number 4. Now, this is Givenchy Gentleman Society. This is the Eau de Toilette. Now, their other Givenchy Gentleman line is really successful. Sales are really good, popular in the community and in the public, and I was like, what the hell do they need another line for? And then I tried it, and right away, it was very obvious to me what they were doing. The Gentleman Society line is trying to appeal to a more mature audience. That's the only reason for its existence. Well, other than for people that are like, had it up to here with excessive vanilla, because there is vanilla in this, and you really get a hit of it in the open. You get a fair amount of a blast of vanilla. Maybe 2 or 3 minutes, it dies down. Because when I first tried it, I rolled my eyes. I'm like, oh, here we go again. But it died down very quickly, and then you get a beautiful mix of what essentially this is. It's a mildly sweet, woody aromatic. The aromatic notes start to pick up. There is sage, and then there's also a narcissus note. And the narcissus is like a spring flower. So it's kind of green. So you get that greenness of the narcissus with the sage, gives it a nice aromatic feel. And then you've got 3 woods in the base. And then you also add cardamom, which is a modern note. So this is not a fragrance that wants to harken back to 1965. Not at all. It's still a modern fragrance. It's just that the vanilla in this is died down. So you get a little bit of vanilla, a little bit of cardamom. You get those aromatic notes and a lot of woods. And it's great. Now, the Eau de Toilette, this is one of the weirdest fragrances I've tried as far as performance goes, because it goes on and it feels fairly light. So the projection on my skin was fairly light, maybe a couple of feet. Now, it lasted forever on my skin, though. I went to bed and I'm thinking, okay, I'd written it off because I thought it's going to go away really quickly. The next day, I could still smell it on my skin. It was faint, but it was there. So longevity, not a problem, but I would like something a little punchier when it comes to projection. And for that, I would recommend the EDP. The note breakdown for the EDP looks a little bit different. It's got some iris in it, but generally most people think it's very, very similar, but it definitely has better projection. But I mean, look, the performance in terms of projection is fine with this one, but it needs a little bit of a kick. I would go with the EDP ultimately, but this is a really nice fragrance for mature guys. Okay, so I'm going to break the vanilla rule here for a second, but with a twist. This is Armani Stronger With You, absolutely. So this is the heavy vanilla. But the thing about the heavy vanilla is it smells like a gourmand, and like as little as 10 years ago, gourmands were mostly worn by women. So something that's super sweet, it tends to come off as a little feminine. But there's one note for me that really counteracts that, and that is booze. And that's what this has in abundance. So this has got the heavy vanilla, but it's got a rum note. It's got a little bit of chestnut as well. So it's a little bit nutty, but it's that rum note, that booziness that brings back the masculinity. And then you combine all of that together with a nice woody base. There's a lot of cedar in this. And the performance is fantastic. Fragrances number 6 and 7 are more affordable options. I wanted to put options out there for as many different people as possible. And if you're wearing a signature scent, it is something you'll be wearing a lot. So these ones are $40 to $50 range. Number 6 is Burberry Brit, and number 7 is Perry Ellis Midnight. 6, Burberry Brit, is my favorite Burberry. No question, none at all. It has some sweetness, but again, turn of the century sweetness, not 2024 sweetness. So there's tonka in this. The main feature of this, though, is a powdery rose. But if you think that's feminine, let me finish. So you've got the powdery rose to start with. You've got the tonka, essentially giving a base of tonka to the fragrance. But it's the spices. So first let's start with ginger, which is a little spicy, but then you've got the cardamom and the nutmeg. So between those 3 notes, it adds some spiciness to the powdery rose. You've got the sweet tonka in the base. The performance here isn't great, but the price is. It's the cheapest fragrance on the list. I think it would be a good option for a signature. You're going to get 4 hours and a fair bit of projection, so I think it's manageable. Perry Ellis Midnight, on the other hand, now this is more of, I would say, a hardcore modern fragrance. This is one for people that are older, more mature, but like the modern vanilla, because this has a lot of it. This is very similar to Most Wanted by Zara, which is their most popular fragrance at the moment. Now, the great thing about this, though, even though it is sweet, it's more ambery sweet than vanilla sweet. So you're going to get amber, mandarin, and a lot of cinnamon. It's a very pleasant fragrance. It's a little bit pricier than Brit, but it's got much better performance. The performance here is really good. This is an excellent fragrance for the price. A little bit of a surprise on this one. This is Maison Margiela, part of the Replica line. This is at the Barbers. And if you are like me, somebody that loved to wear Jacquard Noir back in the day, but are really disappointed with the modern formulations in terms of performance, this will solve all of your problems. Now, it's not exactly the same fragrance, but this is very similar to both Jacquard Noir and Platinum Egoist, but I'm much more familiar with this. So at the Barbers is a slightly fresher version of Jacquard Noir. I get a little bit more sweetness, with just a touch more sweetness with Jacquard Noir. But the best thing about it is it's a smoother version. It irons out a lot of the raw edges of the original Jacquard Noir, and the performance is fantastic. It is deep. It is rich. It is long-lasting, and it projects really well. Okay, something a little more traditional. This is a vetiver fragrance. Now, this is a vetiver fragrance that's green. And when I say green, I don't mean it's a green scent. I just mean that the 3 notes that play a huge role with the vetiver are all green. Mint, grass, and lime. So yeah, there's nothing particularly green about lime other than, the color of it. But you do pick up lime with this more than any other note. So it's a nice juicy lime with a lot of vetiver, primarily a vetiver fragrance. Something like Terre d'Hermès, but going more in the lime direction rather than the orange. Excellent performance. This one is a little bit harder to find. It's been discontinued. You can find it. Took me a while to find it, but great performance. It's just a great all-around good vetiver fragrance. And finally, we have Lalique pour Homme, a fantastic barbershoppy fragrance that leans more woody. So you do get the lavender and the oak moss. You do get a hint of that barbershoppy feel, but it's similar to Bois de Portugal, which means Portuguese wood. So what you're going to get more than anything here are some strong woods. You're really going to notice the woods in this. So it's sandalwood and cedar, and it has that sharp woody feel. The great thing about it, though, is the powderiness of the sandalwood work with the powderiness of the iris, and you really do notice the powdery element that lightens up that heavy woodiness just a little bit. So a little bit of powderiness, a little bit of barbershop, a lot of woodiness. That's what this is. Very solid, 4-hour performance for quite an inexpensive fragrance. But it projects. Projection is not bad for this at all. But anyway, yeah, if you're looking for a signature scent, this is a great video, especially if you're 35 and up. Thanks for watching, dudes.